I Don't Know Yet is not affiliated with any specific 12-step fellowship. The content put forth are the thoughts, opinions, and experiences of the host and guests. It is meant to be suggestive only and is in no way a reflection on how to work the steps in any fellowship or how to work any other recovery program. Okay, we're back. Hey guys, Jen here with I Don't Know Yet, and this is my awesome guest, Chris. Hey Chris.
Hi, Jen.
How are you?
I'm doing pretty damn good.
Good.
Yeah.
Thanks for coming. I'm really glad you're here.
Thanks for having me.
I'm really, really excited. I had mentioned this before in a different episode, but so far, all the people that have come on my show have been people that I talk to like quite often. And I'm really excited to have you here because I've seen you kind of from the beginning of your journey at different rooms and different groups. And you've just become this such a strong person in the rooms.
Oh.
But you and I don't really talk too much like one-on-one. So
Nope.
I'm really excited to be able to get to know you a little better and do this with you.
Absolutely. I look forward to it.
Hell yeah.
Yeah.
What are we talking about today?
We're talking about working the steps.
Hell yeah.
Yeah.
I love that. I think it's really great too because all the episodes so far have only been on certain steps and different things about specific steps. And I'm just really excited to go through the whole thing.
Yeah. I don't know if I can encapsulate all the 12 steps and how I continue to work them. Right? That's, yeah. But we'll give it our best shot.
I love it.
Yeah.
Let's talk step one.
Step one.
What was it like for you to work step one when you came in?
So my initial experience with step one, I joined with the Zoom rooms.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
So
Yep.
once I sobered up, white knuckled it for a brief stint of time and found that it wasn't going to last.
Right.
Right. So came into the Zoom rooms and reluctantly got a sponsor.
Okay.
And
I love that you honestly said reluctantly.
oh, of course, right? And the beauty about that was at the time, so I knew I had a problem with drugs and alcohol. And he gave me his number. I shot him a text. And I remember when I texted him and I sent the text and said, hey, like, do you sponsor whatever? And I didn't even have time to put my phone down. And he called me.
No way.
Yeah.
Love that.
Like that straight up. And it was like, I remember the fear coming up in me. And it's like, home, like, this is
getting real.
And I can't act like I was busy or like I literally just sent the text, right? So my first initial step one was part of a 20-minute phone call conversation with him.
Okay.
Right? And that was what I needed at the time because I was doing a dance. I was like, well, I think I'm on step one and maybe I'm on two. I was doing this 1, 2, 3 shuffle, as they say. So it was a 20-minute phone call conversation where he just said, you admit that, you're screwed when it comes to any kind, like whatever substance it is. You're done. Right? I said, yeah. So he said, okay. He talked me through, am I willing to believe in something and am I willing to turn that over? And basically just got me started on a 4 right there. Right?
Interesting.
Yeah. And so I wouldn't recommend that.
Okay.
Okay. Like looking at that at the time, it was what did me well to at least get me into action. Mm-hmm. Right? Because I was sitting there just indecisive and he got me started on a 4. Right? So that step one for me was very much just I was hiding in my apartment. I was worried about getting kicked out because I couldn't pay my rent and all this. And like life was getting pretty shitty. So at the time, great. Looking back, wish I would have went to a physical room, right? And did it that way. But it's the past. It all happened for a reason the way it is. Mm-hmm. So going through that set of steps, half measures.
Oh, yeah.
Half measures.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
At best.
Yeah, at best, right? And so the thing is that early on, it felt good to be part of something. And it felt like, I'd jump into service and like do these things like chairing a Zoom meeting or, it was great. The thing is, though, is like I started hearing other people talk about working the book and like reading with this. And I started to get resentful over this. And I formed a resentment with that sponsor because I'm like, oh, he didn't do it this way. Mm-hmm. And so, I got sour about it for a while. And then I was like, well, it's my journey and it's my choice. Like, so then I decided, okay, I'll go to one of these physical rooms that I've started coming to, realizing that, I can show up and there's people that love me there. and found a sponsor and started reading through the book, right? Starting with Doctor's Opinion, because I didn't even know that was a thing when I first bought that book. Didn't even know. And
Interesting.
yeah.
What a cool way to like start your journey. It probably made the second time through just like, see, because for me, I found I loved going through the book the second time with my first sponsee, because there was so many times when I was still so blocked going through it the first time with my sponsor. She would be reading and I was obviously thinking about boys or drugs or work or stress, and she'd be reading these paragraphs and I wasn't even processing the information. So when I went through the second time, it was like reading it for the first time.
Exactly.
It's crazy. I remember my step one, which was it's so different from what I hear from other people, just because I know a lot of us do get to the rooms from being court mandated into that stuff, but it's not as common.
Yeah.
And for me, when I was applying to this program to try to be able to be court mandated to go into recovery, one of the questions they asked me was, why should we accept you? And on this sheet, there was like this much room on the bottom to write an answer. And I was high at the time, so I don't remember a lot. Yep. But I wrote that, I turned the page over, and I filled the whole page. And I don't remember what I wrote, but I remember at the end saying, if this ruins my life and I go to jail, it doesn't matter if I go for a day, a week, a month, or 10 years. The fact is, I can't stop doing drugs.
Yep.
It doesn't matter how long I go, I can't stop doing drugs, and I can't do this by myself. And I didn't realize, because that was probably 6 months before I went into the rooms. I didn't realize that for me, looking back now, was the moment I knew I had a problem. And then immediately got resentful and like, because when I got there, I'm like, because I tried recovery years ago once, right? I was in a relationship, he left, I was butthurt about it and just tried to win him back. Yep. And so I didn't go for myself. I didn't go because I wanted to learn any change behavior. I just left there being like, there is no God and I'm never going back to the rooms. Yep. So when I came in, I was super nervous because I'm like, I got pushed into this thing and I knew if I wasn't ready, it wasn't going to work. I knew that God word was waiting, but I knew that I couldn't stop using drugs by myself. And so circumstances made me willing to try. And it was fascinating because I went into detox and I had a speaker come share their story. Completely different stories, completely different DOCs, very different age range. But I couldn't stop listening to her. There was just something about her. And I really liked her. And I was so afraid to ask anybody for anything. I remember the meeting ended. I walked up and started crying. And I'm like, will you be my sponsor? I'm told I'm supposed to ask for one. And she was like, I'll be a temporary sponsor for you for sure. And then I went into treatment. COVID happened while I was in treatment. So I get out of treatment. The world's closed. But luckily, thank God, the room I met you in, right, stayed open and added all these meetings. And so I had met with this lovely woman 4 or 5 times. And then I went to these meetings that they had access to 8 or 10 meetings a day. And I had the same thing because I'm like listening to people talk about their sponsors and getting together and reading the book and doing step work. And I'm like, I've met my sponsor 4 times. We've never fucking opened the book. But at the time, my defense, like I was too afraid to ask why. I'm like, who am I to say what's supposed to happen? I've never I never asked her about it. I recognized that that's not what I wanted. And I actively started looking for someone else. Yep. And then my sponsor that I had for 3 years, I saw her take her 1 year in a fellowship while I was like 30 days sober in treatment. I watched her take her year. And then I saw her at this other group down south, and I saw her speak, and I'm like, I remember you. I remember you taking your year. Will you be my sponsor? And so we got together and started chatting, and I'm like, can you just do me a favor? She's like, what? I'm like, can we just like read the book? She's like, yeah. Yeah, we could do that. Yeah. I'm like, okay, cool. Because apparently that's what you need to do to work the steps. And I didn't know that, but I can't stop drinking and drugging. Yeah. And I need help. Yeah. And that was my experience with one.
And so when you say that, it was very much like I had nothing else, right? Everyone else had turned, look, my family, like I was not invited Thanksgiving dinner. That was actually the last relapse that I had. So Thanksgiving to December, right? And that was what it took. And so I like that. It was very similar there where, you know, me coming in, a whole lot of pride and ego, right?
Oh, yeah.
And I got this new sponsor he's a gentleman who's got he's got the family life. He demonstrates a program. He lives it. And I'm sitting there going like, well, this isn't the way I think it should go, right? I hear these other people. So I had to go and find out on my own, right? I was like, if this isn't working for me, and that's today working with the sponsor I have currently, because I'm trying to commit and stay with the sponsor now.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
And he told me, he's like, I don't hire and fire. He's like, you're not paying me to do this, right? And there's no, like, this isn't a job. This is just me doing this for myself to stay sober, right? So I may have fired that sponsor, but I don't really look at it that way. Maybe it's more just your paths only cross for that little period of time. And then after that, who knows?
I can't wait to talk more about that. When we'll do that when we get to 12. But yeah, I think that's some really good content for people to hear. There's a lot of stigma around the whole hiring and firing of it all, and that's just my experiences have taught me a lot more about the depth of those things. We'll get there.
Yeah.
Let's talk step 2.
Step 2. So again, the initial 1, 2, 3 for me was a 20-minute phone call. It felt cheap, but it got me where I was. So step 2, the second time around, it was a given, I guess. It was like come into these rooms because, you know, we have I can't stop drinking. I can't stop using. It's just so working with that sponsor, when it came to reading the book and reading the main text and actually him explaining this to me, you know, like it's however many pages it is, it's not that much, but it took a long time just for him to drill into my head just how screwed I am, right? So then like rolling into step 2 and saying like, if you actually realize like just how screwed you are, like there's no alternative here, right? It's like, do you want to live or do you want to die? And there was part of me that said, yeah, I want to live, right? So coming to believe like, yeah, I was raised Roman Catholic. My mom tried to enroll me did enroll me in Catholic schools from kindergarten to grade 12. Not religious. She didn't practice that. But she's like, I was just hoping that I could like just get some good into you and like make sure you're a good kid, right? And just give you that hope, right? Like she's not religious at all, but it came from that place of like, I just want to see my boy, you know, not go to the dark side. Yeah. Right? So I learned to not like God. Right? Because I resented like the rebellious part of me. I didn't want to religion class every day and like having to go to these assemblies in school and going to church. It was like, I don't want to do this. Right? Yeah. So I had a relationship with God of some description. Just it wasn't good. Yeah, I can't do religion. Right? I just can't. I'm not going to go to church, and that's okay. Right? Because as explained to me this is spiritual. Right? I don't have to go to mass. And that works for me, right? So coming to believe, and I guess the second part when we talk about insanity, there's a part in the big book that resonates for me when it talks about the bedevilments, right? And I didn't even I had a point of realization only a couple weeks ago, right? How selfish and insane I was that when it talks about these bedevilments, the last one is we were of no use to help other people, right? Yep. I had no desire to do that at all.
Of course not.
No, I'm selfish. I don't want to help other people.
Screw other people. Like, I can't even help myself.
I hold the door open for people. That should be enough. That is literally the way I thought. Yep. So, yeah, it was, I don't know, it was kind of a head trip to look at this and say that, you know, like part of what's going to take for Chris to survive is to be able to like think of other people. Cause like that's something new for me. And I don't know. I don't even know how to describe that.
It's funny that you say that because when I went to this second sponsor and I asked if she would be my sponsor, she said, well, let's get together. Let's have like what she called a first appointment. Let's have a chat and see if we think it would be a good fit. And I don't remember a lot of the things that she asked me, but I do remember at the end of it, she said, one more thing. I only sponsor women who sponsor other women. So are you willing to sponsor other women when you're through this process? And I looked at her. I was still sick at this point. I looked her right in the face and I lied through my teeth. I'm like, oh, yeah, no problem. I had no intention on helping other people because I was broken, hopeless, and suicidal at that time. Like, I couldn't even help myself. I had no intention of helping other people. It's amazing what the process of completing the steps, like how transformative it really is to get us out of self. Now I struggle with thinking about other people too much.
So we swing to the other side of the pendulum, right? It's like we keep searching for balance, but for myself, I always seem to go to one extreme or the other, right? And it's like it smooths down after a while, but I can't say that I'm living a completely balanced life today because, I'm still crazy at times, right?
It takes years.
Yeah.
Like I'm over. So like I feel like the first three for me were like this.
Yeah.
And just now I feel like it's starting to do this.
Oh, that gives me hope.
Good. Amazing. I really hope that if I continue to dig in a few years, it'll be more like this.
Yeah.
But it takes a lot of work.
Yep.
It takes work.
It does.
Yeah. So my experience with 2, and I talked about this a little bit on another episode. Sorry if it's repetitive, people. Because of my trying to do treatment that one time 15 years ago, I knew that word was waiting. And I knew that there was no God. So I had a serious problem because I knew that I couldn't stop picking up. I knew I was fucked. But I couldn't get behind a solution, right? And so that was really, really tough. And we went through the material and she said, like, if you don't get this, we're not moving on because it's a waste of time. Like, you need to be able to become willing. And so we read through all the material and like I love that chapter. I love talking about, like, what about the most mathematical minds that swore the Wright brothers would never fly? They were wrong, right? And all the material made so much sense, but my brain could not stop thinking that I knew everything and I knew more and I know this and the closed-mindedness of it all. And so we went through the material. She said, do you believe? And I'm like, absolutely not. Absolutely. If I have to be honest in this program, I'll tell you that I don't.
Yeah.
And then I immediately felt screwed. I'm like, what am I going to do? And she's like, okay, why did you ask me to sponsor you? And I was like, because I was told to find somebody who had what I wanted. And you seem pretty happy and you don't pick up from what I can tell. And like, you have all these great things. That's why. And she said, okay, if I looked you in the face and told you that I knew to my core that actively there was a higher power working in my life every single day, would you be able to agree that I believe that? And I was like, well, fuck, you're making it really hard for me to say no.
Yeah.
Right? I'm like, okay, I can get behind that. Yes. I believe that you believe.
Yep.
And then she's like, that's a start. And I was like, okay. And it was so long ago now, it's a little bit muffled, but I remember the light bulb came on when I was in a meeting. It was a room that I went to while I was in treatment. It's not a room that I'm a huge fan of. And I really haven't been back, but I'm never going to forget that this person single-handedly changed my life. I have no idea if they were a man or a woman, no idea what their name was, don't remember. But I remember them sitting at a meeting and saying, nobody comes to the rooms because their life is going well. They come to the rooms because they're broken, right? And so if it's so easy to understand the idea that drugs and alcohol are bigger than you and run your life, why is it so hard just to understand there might be something bigger than you that's better for you too?
Yeah.
Why is that so hard to understand? And I was like, bing! Oh my God, is that how is that all willing is? And they're like, and then she talked about like, you don't need to know what it is you believe in. You don't need to understand it. Like, people with years still don't understand it. You just need to know that if there's this, there could be that.
Exactly.
And I was like, holy, and I immediately ran home, called my sponsor, or ran back to treatment. I'm like, I'm ready, let's go.
Yeah.
But yeah, the insanity of it all, it was fascinating too, because sometimes I like to be a little controversial on this show. Sometimes I like to throw my opinions around.
Got some outside issues coming.
One of the biggest, in my opinion, and I could be wrong, But I feel that one of the biggest misconceptions about insanity is that Edison quote. Insanity is doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different result. And while that statement is very true, I feel like that's not as applicable as really what insanity is when it comes to addiction. And I'll tell you why. I did some research. And so the actual definition, the medical definition of insanity is a mental illness of such a severe nature that the person cannot distinguish between fantasy and reality. How does that not sound like the cycle of alcoholism in the doctor's opinion?
Oh, yeah.
Right? 100%.
There's actually a very similar statement in there, too.
Very similar statement. Yeah. And so I love listening to Joe and Charlie. I love listening to those tapes. And they talk about insanity and like your brain as being like a pie. Imagine you have a pie and there's 10 pieces in it and you take 2 away. You're not a pie still. You are. You're not a vegetable. Like you're still able of cognitively thinking.
Yeah.
But you're not whole. There's pieces missing. And that's what I've come to understand is how my brain as an addict or an alcoholic functions. I think just fine, just not whole. So most of the time it's wrong, right? Like I'm not insane. I'm not crazy. I don't have the ability to think fully. And because of that and because of my illness, when I'm not constantly working on this stuff, that's when my thoughts can turn into obsession. And that's when my obsession is going to tell me that picking up a drink or a drug is going to solve my problem. And not being able to catch those things before I'm picking up. That's the insanity of it all.
I like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's at our core. I can't speak for all alcoholics, but I can speak for myself and say that naturally I am just an obsessive person.
Oh, yeah.
And whether speaking with a pillar that I have, he told me, he's like, naturally, we are obsessive people, and it doesn't have to be drink or drug. As I found out, we're getting off top. It could be money, it could be my job, it could be a relation, it could be whatever, right? If I'm not working a program, if I'm not turning this over to God, I can get in that loop.
Yep.
Right? And that's I like that I'm not whole. I'm not thinking well, right? And it's just you spin out and yeah, that's how we're predisposed to think. And whether it's some people believe we were born with it, others believe that it's when
you cross that line.
When you cross that line, right? When
yeah.
you poison yourself to that extent, you're a cucumber turned into a pickle.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, and I love that explanation of it all, because now I understand that it's God that fills that hole. It's God that makes me think whole. It's why I have to pause, pray, proceed. It's why I need to reach out to others who are also 12-stepped and have access to a higher power, right? That's literally what it does. I have this illness. I'm never going to think whole, ever.
Yeah.
That's what I need God for.
Yeah. And it's you can get caught, when we're caught in those loops, it's so skipping ahead to On Awakening is just asking, when those moments of pause, right? Because it's not to say that I went through the 12 steps and all of a sudden now I'm cured, right? It's I still have these problematic thought patterns, but I have the tools today that if I get into that, this is okay, Chris is trying to run his will here, he's going off the deep end or whatever it is. It's okay, so this is where maybe I should invite God in,
yeah.
Right? And it's yeah, it's a stop. It's a stopgap. Is that the word?
I don't know, but it sounds good.
Okay.
We'll
go with it.
Works for me.
Good. As long as it sounds good, yeah.
Okay, I think that's pretty much covers step 2.
I think so.
Yeah. How about your experience with 3?
Step 3, so this is something that I was taught with sponsorship, and this is what my sponsor made me do, was going through these steps. When it came to step 3, it's not just a one and done deal, but when you're going through the book and it shows up, it ego deflating. So minus 45, don't care. In a crowd of people, don't care. You have to get down on your knees and do it right there as the book, because we always read, I don't know about you, but for me, it was always we read in the car. There's something spiritual about smoking cigarettes.
Sitting in the car.
Sitting in a car, smoking cigarettes and reading through the book. And I remember I've done this twice, working out of the car, where once we hit that point, it's do or die, right? It's what's gonna you're scared of doing this step 3 prayer in front of other people. Why, right? And it was just, I guess it was a test to see if I'm willing enough to do it, right? and turning my will over like this one time, because the thing is, like I say, not one and done. It's a constant reminder every day and every second, right? But it's like, I guess it lets them know where I'm at. So reading through the book up to this point and spending a lot of time, it was like there was an emotional investment there with my sponsor, right? And I was kind of warned. It was like, if you don't do this, then I'm not going any further with you, right? So
Yeah.
there was fear there. It was like, okay. Yeah.
Do or die.
Yeah, do or die.
Yeah.
So minus 45. I remember the first time I did step 3 prayer with a sponsor, like going through this, it was minus 45 out. It was in a parking lot at Safeway. There was a crowd of people walking in and out and all that. And we did it right there in the bumper of his
I love that.
yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
I have not done that much step work in cars.
No?
No. No.
So you do it in your house?
Or so when I was working the steps, I went to my sponsor's house or she would come to my house.
Yeah.
Now that I sponsor others, it takes, and this is just a personal thing based on some of the other chapters, people might disagree with me, but given my living situation and the people that I live with in the home, I do not let sponsees come into my house until they've reached a certain point.
Yep.
Yeah. So I go to their house or I meet at a Tim Hortons.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I get that.
Did you hear that, Tim Hortons? Talking about you online. Excuse me while I drink my Tim Hortons.
So, yeah, so how do I put this? I've hired and fired sponsors, right? Mm-hmm. So,
How many sponsors have you had over your time?
3.
Okay.
It seems like 1 a year, but I'm holding on to this one for, we're going into year 4. I'm still sticking with this because his knowledge of this program, and he has this way of showing up when we get in these moments where we're disturbed or whatever. He has this habit of showing up and I'm not expecting it, right? It's like, yeah, I might turn him into some kind of a god at times, but the thing is he's like that friend that's always seems to show up when the chips are down.
Okay.
Yeah, what was I talking about there? I just lost my train of thought. Oh, I've had 3.
Okay.
So I've had 3. So
Way to jump back. That was impressive.
Yeah, that I remember when I asked him to sponsor me, it was because I guess I felt lost, right? Like I felt like, I'm doing this program, but like I'm starting to feel like I need to understand more. And it's like, why not go with a guy who's got like over 2 decades of time, and time's not everything. Okay. I'm not going to say that, but I see him in the rooms working the program, and like his number one thing is being of maximum service to other people, right? And I really respect that.
Love that.
Yeah. And so, yeah, when I see someone who's that involved in the program, right, and is doing that deal, it's like, okay, then I want what he has. And at the time, it was very much, it's just, he seemed to me and seems to me to exemplify what this stands for, right? And doing your best and like having the knowledge of this stuff and being able to get it through to my thick skull, because I still get prideful and full of ego, and I get that way, but he's able to explain and go into the minute details, and the way he's able to just bring up pages, just be like, oh, you're talking about page 24, right? And just like off the top of his head, or like go to whatever page, and he just knows it, right? Because it's second nature.
Because he's read it so many times.
It's second nature,
Yeah.
right? And it's like, so I definitely respect that a lot. Right.
That's awesome.
So, yeah.
Yeah. My experience with 3, I remember same thing. She had me get on my knees with her. It was in a room after the meeting was over, now that I think back to it. But doing the prayer wasn't the thing that I remember most. The thing that I remember most, and one of the things that I'm really grateful, it didn't help at all. It did not help at all. But I remember it the most, and I really try to instill this in my people now, is she said that there is no time limit between 3 and 4. She's like, this is the part that's going to launch you into 4.
Okay.
So get off your ass and get to work. And so one of the cool ways that I've learned how to explain the steps for people that maybe don't know them is I love it. It's step 1 is the problem. Step 2 is the solution. Step 3 is what you're going to do. Step 4 through 9 is how you're going to do it. And step 10 through 12 is how you're going to keep it.
Oh, mine's so similar.
Right?
Mine's
yeah,
so
you want to
similar.
give your life and your will over to the care of God as you understand him? Sure. What does that mean? It means get to work and find out all the things that have been blocking you from him.
Yeah.
So get to work.
Yeah.
Like that was it. And so I really enjoyed my experience of doing 3. Obviously 3 means something totally different to me today than it did at the time because I have a deeper knowledge, right? And understand the idea of being able to turn it over and using step 11 and all that stuff. But yeah, for me, it was the big thing being like, I love how the book says, like, even though this was a vital and crucial step, it would have little permanent effect unless at once followed by a strenuous effort to face and get rid of the things that had been blocking us. Which I loved, which leads into step 4, which I don't recommend for anyone to sit on for because I did for months.
Oh.
And and literally she's like, let's do step 3. Let's give it over. Now get to work. Tell me your experience and then I'll share with you how I
My
did not do
experience
a
on
good job with
4. Okay. So, what I consider to be the real the real 4s that I did, because there was 2 of them where I did it with a sponsor and did like all 3 sections. Coming out of 3, the first time with, can't say his name. He gave me the bracket, right? Start off with resentments, right? And the 4 columns, and starting with just the names and all that, and said you got 2 weeks. Just get to it, right? 2 weeks, 2-week deadline. And I was like, okay. And I actually put a lot of work into getting it done for the 2 weeks, but was not successful, right? Because that's just what Chris likes to do, right? Come up with excuses. And he had told me already when I didn't meet the 2-week deadline, he had already had it, like, from how he was taught. It was like, usually this is how it goes, is that we don't meet the deadline. So here's a 1-week extension, right? And get through it. So I sat for probably a month and a half, right? Because I didn't meet any deadline. But going through these resentments, it was like disturbing, I guess. Like it was trying, right? Going through this grudge list and the fear of sex. I don't know if it was my own fear that that I was gonna go and like do something like whether it be suicide or go out and use again, because I get myself into such a emotional state, right? And I get locked in. That's what alcoholics do. But I didn't sit on it. I had friends who sat on it for over a year.
Oh.
Yeah. And like I saw what it did to them, and I was like, I don't know if I can do that. Like
That's white knuckling it right
yeah.
there.
And it's like that hurts. So like after a month and a half, like I was able, like, even if it was just 10 minutes a day, whatever, I'll go through this and do it. And like each time I've done it, like with every set of steps, like it gets easier, and I'm able to be more efficient with it, and I am better equipped to at least I can recognize if I'm starting to get like into those negative thoughts. It doesn't do anything good, and do something about it, whether it be prayer, meditation, or going to a meeting, or reaching out to another member, right? Whatever it is. But turns out Chris is an emotional guy, right? And if I let those things take hold and like don't turn that over, then it's not a fun time. So called my sponsor a lot, especially with dealing with the resentments. Everything else was kind of like just meh. But called him a lot, and sometimes he'd pick up the phone, other times he wouldn't, because what do you know, his life doesn't revolve around Chris.
Right? Devastating to find that out when you're new. You're supposed to be here for me, sponsor.
I still have those moments. I'm not, but that's okay. It was, each time it seemed to be less and less painful to do it.
Oh, yeah.
Right? And the self-discovery and learning compassion for oneself when it comes to that, because I don't know what your thoughts are on like putting yourself on your resentment list. Like I don't I never did, but that's a big part of it, was that like you need to be able to forgive yourself when it comes to this stuff too, because otherwise, like if you can't love yourself, how are you going to put anything else out into the world besides pissy Chris, right?
Yep.
But yeah,
I just love being able to sit down with people and have these conversations and just like hear their experiences. I just love it. My experience with 4, I really thought a year to me is insane. I thought that 4.5 months was like, I've never heard of anyone taking longer than I had until you just mentioned that. So I'm good. It's nice to know I'm not alone.
no,
But yeah, 4 for me. And I think it's important that I tell viewers one of the biggest misconceptions of all the rooms I've ever been to is that you get those people that talk about step 4 and make it sound scary, make it sound hard, give you a reason to not want to do it. And I listened to all of those people, and they drowned out all the solution-filled people that were being like, don't listen to that. It's fact-finding, fact-facing, and you'll feel so much better when it's done. Yeah. And so I was terrified to do it. And take that fear to, like, bring all that stuff up that I'd been pushing down forever, paired with this court mandation where I was terrified. My brain went, I cannot fail at this or I'm fucked.
Yeah.
I can't move forward until it's perfect. I can't fail. So I need to make sure that I do this as thoroughly as possible. And that really hurt me because I sat on it forever. And my sponsor, who was great, same thing. Hey, you got to get started, do this in the first week or 2 weeks, right? Oh yeah, no problem. I didn't hit mine either. Let's do an extension. Exact same thing. After a while, it was, I'm going to go and do my thing. This is my sponsor being like, I'm going to continue on and do my thing. When you're ready, you can call me. And 2 months later, she called me and she's like, what's the holdup? What are you doing?
Yep.
Right? It's been months. Like, you're doing yourself a disservice. What's happening? And, like, thank God that she reached out to me because I didn't realize, because I hadn't yet gone through this process, that fear stops me from asking for help a lot.
Yep.
Not wanting people to see me as a failure. So she bluntly asked me, and I'm like, I'm terrified that I'm not going to do it right. And I can't fail. And she was like, oh, honey, no, stop. My experience of 4 and 5, I did it. And within a week, I already had a new list going. Like, you need to understand that God is only going to give you as much as you can handle. Never more, never less. Stop trying to think about things that God's not ready for you to remember. You have a list, you have your shit down. Let's do that.
Yep.
And when it's supposed to come up, it will. And I was like, well, that was so much easier. Yeah. She's like, yeah, that's why you should reach out to me and ask for help. And like, that was like one of the earmarked moments where I'm like, maybe I should ask for help instead of trying to deal with these emotions on my own. Because it was bad. Like I started isolating. I was very dishonest because I'd show up to rooms and be like, yeah, I'm great. And then I'd get in my car and drive home crying because I was not great at all.
Oh,
right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yep. I would like to throw in just a couple of tips for 4 that I found once I learned it was okay to ask for help. A couple of things that were extremely helpful was, number 1, ask God to help you write down whatever needs to be written down, and then ask God to let you leave it on the paper. So one of the things that was the hardest for me in that 4 months before asking for help was that I'd bring these things up that I had buried down, and then I focused on them for the rest of my day, and it ruined my days. It ruined certain weeks. It was exhausting. It was shameful. I was full of guilt, or I was super angry. Like, there was just so many emotions that I didn't know how to cope with because now I didn't have drugs and alcohol to lean on, but I still had no solution.
Yep.
So I felt like absolute shit. So when I talked to my sponsor, she's like, ask God for acceptance that these things have already happened. Right? Ask him what needs to come out of you and ask him to help you leave it there.
Yep.
Don't worry about dealing with it until we get together for 5. And that was really helpful for me. It was really helpful for me.
Yeah. The tip that I wish I would have followed more, because the advice was given to me, and I did do it a handful of times when I'd sit down and do it, was they said, light a candle, say a prayer, set a timer for 15 minutes if that's all that Chris can deal with, whatever. And once that's done, say thank you God, blow out the candle, and like make that a ritual. And I found when I did that, it actually went very well.
I love that. I've never heard that.
Yeah,
I'm gonna try that.
This is the alcoholic Chris. So it was like, so when I did that, it went very well, and like it was a lot easier. I felt a lot lighter from it, and I wasn't carrying that shit for the most part like out into my day. But still, I'm lazy or whatever it was. So there'd be times where I just do my 4 and just like white knuckle it and don't ask God, and like, you know, not fun, not fun at all. But the thing is like I knew better, right? It's my alcoholic mind, right? Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
I'm gonna try that next time.
Yeah, it's for your next 4.
I mean, I've done enough of them now, and I'm good enough at 10s now. I shouldn't have another one come up, but I am an alcoholic and an addict. Yeah. So, if not, maybe I'll just try it when I do a 10.
Yeah.
See.
Well, because actually, we're getting ahead, but 10, the first instruction is to pray to God.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm really enjoying this conversation. Thanks for doing this with me.
No problem.
Tell me about your 5. As surface level as you want it to be. I don't need details.
No.
Just about your experience.
I won't. So the experience, there's 2 experiences the 2 different basic ways is, so the first time I went to the Mount.
Okay.
I went and spoke with the friar, and it actually put my mind at ease when I went in to do my 5, because I was so worried that I was going to like have cops show up, or, you know, he's going to report me or whatever. So it was pretty reassuring when I go there, and there's this big thick door that's covered in carpet. It's obviously soundproofed, right? And it was like, close that, and it's like, whatever happens here, like, stays here. Mm-hmm. It was very comforting. But again, that was the first one. So it was very much, it lightened the backpack of all that stuff that I had.
But it didn't give you a roadmap of where to go after that.
No, I came out of that and like, because there's no
feedback.
There's no feedback. He read, I can't even remember what page it is, but he read just like a little excerpt and then closed the book and said, okay. Right. And it was great. Like it gave me relief at the time, and it did help me to move forward with like 6 and 7 working with that sponsor. But it was like, there's no feedback. I have no idea what the hell I'm doing. But at the time, like that's all I knew. Another part of the reason why I went and found a sponsor to go through the book with me. So coming around again and doing it with someone who's got a lot of time in it and is able to actually sit down and give me a sheet of paper with a list of character defects and give me fears that I didn't even know I had. Because I made a fears list with my current sponsor, right? But he was still able to bring out other fears that I couldn't see, I wasn't aware of, and see how that was running my life, right? And stemming from childhood or whatever. But we did it in the car. It was lengthy. We had to take breaks for food. We had to take breaks for like all this.
How long would you say yours was?
We met at 8:00 at a treatment center. Sorry. We started off in the car and went into the treatment center after, so we could be comfortable. We met at 8 there, and I think we were finished around 3 or 4. So it was
lengthy. Yeah, mine was like 11 hours over 2 or 3 sittings. I can't remember.
Oh, you had to break yours up?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's something that moving forward I try my best not to do with.
Me too.
But life happens, right?
It wasn't her choosing. It was more just that's all I could do at the time.
Yep.
Because I spent so long having it weigh me down, it was just too much to take in one sitting.
And so you had a sponsor that like was actually able to read you and didn't put you through hell.
Yeah.
Right? And that was another thing that my sponsor did this last time too, is he'd see, right? And that's break for food, or we're going to go get vape juice, right? Because we obviously need that.
Yeah.
Nicotine. Oh. Yeah. But yeah, it felt like it flew by.
Right? Yeah.
Right? Like
they do.
You look at the clock and it's like, where did the time go? Right? And it's like, I'm taking so much time with like the big ones at the front of the 4, and like I'm resentful as all hell, but spending all that time with those, and it's like after a few hours of that, I started looking at the other ones, and they already started kind of lifting away, because it's like I've already been shown the patterns. I've already been shown how like my defects come out, my fears and all that, and how that like intrinsically runs my life. So it's not to say we didn't cover like the ones that were smaller on the list, but it was like as we're coming across it, and he just kind of look at me and be like, "So you see, right? Like you see how like your fear of whatever it is, whether it be like fear of judgment was a big one for me. Worried about what people think." And he's like, "Do you see how like without even going into this too far, can you see how like this is hitting you and how like you are screwing yourself here?" It's like, yeah, right. He still talk with me about it, but again, it got real easy to just kind of skip through him after
you
point.
because your main like deepest rooted defects are the things that affect the most. Yeah. See, and it's so interesting because my experience, I couldn't finish my 4 without my sponsor.
Yep.
Because I was like, I didn't understand the 3rd column, and I definitely, like, the 4th column is being able, so I've heard mixed things, right? The way that I was taught was to do the first 3 columns. You get together with your sponsor, you do a 5, they give you feedback, and they point out to you your part in where the change behavior needs to come from, and that's the 5. Right. And I've heard so many other people just be like, no, like you talk about it, or you go to the mountain, you do all these things. And I'm like, I couldn't, even when you read the instructions in the book, it's like, you do this, then you try to look at it from another angle. I couldn't. I was so blocked. And so that was one of the things my sponsor and I talked about when she's like, what's the holdup? And I'm like, I can't figure out any of this stuff. She's like, okay, just do the first 2 columns then. And then let's get together and get to work. And so she helped me with the 3rd column. But I remember one of the examples that I do, I teach a big book study at the treatment center that I went to. And this is one of the examples I use every time when I'm trying to get people that are blocked to see it. So I dated this guy. He cheated on me with this girl he works with that was his quote unquote best friend. Then he started dating her. And then somehow he came back to me. And it was this back and forth between this girl and I for a while. And it was awful.
Yeah.
This person ended up leaving me for this person, dated this person for a long time, had a baby with this person, all this stuff. And so the example that I love to talk about is this one, because my sponsor's like, okay, who? This person. Why? All these reasons. After all of this happened, he also moved into my ex-best friend's house, who was a drug dealer, and set me up to be jumped by this person. So there's a lot of things on my list about it.
Yeah.
And so I remember sitting down and then having her say, like, do you see your part? And I'm like, no, I don't. I see a total asshole. He treated me like shit. Like I was so blocked by that victim mentality, that pity party. Poor me. Why me? And she, bless her heart, she did a lot of work with me. She had to look me in the face and shove some humble pie right down my throat. To be like, okay, so she's like, let's start easy. You date a guy, he cheats on you. Don't you see that by you giving him another chance?
Yeah, like
that's your fault?
He showed his true colors.
Like he gave you a red flag and you chose to ignore it.
Yeah.
You dated somebody who didn't have the qualities of person that you're looking for.
Yeah.
And I was like, that actually makes a lot of sense. Fascinating.
Yeah.
Right? And then in working more and more and going through that and talking about the sane sound sex ideals, she said, now your goal that you've seen these things is to start learning to look for people that have the qualities that you want. And if they don't have those qualities, don't engage. Yes. Because it will not end well and you will be resentful. And it'll actually be your fault because you should have never engaged with that person to begin with. And I was like, all that sounds amazing. Cool. And then the next year I did that 3 times by dating 3 people I shouldn't have dated. But then I learned. So
yeah. And it's learning about when you're developing those ideals too, is like if you expect to see something out of people, it's like you have to be putting something out there that is going to attract what you're looking for.
Yeah.
Right? Like I talk about playing the victim mentality, and it's like, well, if I'm just gonna keep going with whatever, and like these red flags that I might see, right? If I ignore it and then play the victim about it, it's like, well, no, I saw it, and I chose to ignore it. So there's my part, right? Like I can't sit here and be like, oh, how could this happen to me? It's like,
You did it.
yeah, I saw the sign,
Yeah.
right? I don't know what song that is.
Yeah, it was just a really fascinating, but again, like I could never have seen that without my sponsor pointing the way. And so I remember I was also very afraid to go into the 5 process because I was bullied my whole life. A lot of my defects came from childhood, and
Yeah.
I remember in my life, my whole life, every time things didn't go well, I got picked on. Like what I remember, like inside my fucking soul would just be like, why is this happening to me? Why me? Why? And so the idea of somebody telling me all the things that were wrong with me just didn't float my boat, right?
Yeah.
But I went through with the process. And the relief that I felt, I thought it was going to be scary, but in all actuality, there was just this relief because I finally had an answer to why. I'm like, oh, that's why my life's like that. That's why I was bullied. I never fucking stood up for myself. That's why I had all these bad relationships. I was choosing the wrong people. That's why I treated this person like shit because I was being super selfish. I'm like, oh. And so for the first time in my life, I had this map on how to correct these behaviors so this kind of stuff doesn't have to happen to me anymore.
And to gain some self-worth with
It was
too.
so freeing. Oh, the self-worth that came
Yeah.
with doing 5. I love 5s now. I love them.
Like you're still not doing step 5s for yourself. Now it's doing them.
Now it's 10s, right?
Yeah.
But doing step 5s with other people,
Yeah.
and sponsorship, I just sometimes like I know walking into them it could be up to 12 hours, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like I know that it's going to be mentally draining, but to help watch the light come on in someone else's eyes and see them get that freedom and get that self-worth back, like it's just beautiful.
Yep.
And I've done enough of them now. A really good tip that I'd love to throw in, I heard it at a meeting just a couple of months ago, and it was like the most brilliant thing I've ever heard, and now I use it religiously, is a lot of people that come in because 5, and it talks about in the book, like if you're not honest, this will not work. The things that you don't want to talk about the most are the things you have to get out the most, right? So I preface when I sit down with somebody doing a 5, and I'm like, you need to be honest with me. This is 100% confidential. Like I set the pace. I tell them the worst things that I've ever done
Yep.
to give them like, here's some of the stuff that I've done. You don't need to worry about telling me your stuff. And then the way that he worded this in this meeting, and now I use it. I love it. Once you've heard 4 or 5 5s, like they're all the same.
Yeah.
Like I guarantee you, if I haven't done it, I could guarantee you I've heard about it.
Yeah.
But most importantly, and I'm like, I'm not saying I did this, but this is the example, right? I don't care that you robbed a bank.
Yeah.
I don't fucking care. I don't care what bank it was. I don't care how much money you took. I don't care who was in on it. I care why you did it.
Yep.
That's it. Right? And it's like, sorry, I'm an addict. I'm not going to remember 80% of your 5 anyway.
Exactly.
Right?
It's as long as you're able to give input in the moment,
Yeah.
right? That's all that matters. I forget a lot when it comes to those 5s too, but the thing that I found is that the few that I've done, I haven't been able to do too many with other people, but the few that I've done, oftentimes it comes out organically for me. So I don't start it off with saying like, okay, well, here's like my street cred. This is what I've done, or this is what's happened to me. Is like more often than not, like when the big ones start coming out, like it just comes out and it's like, well, maybe I didn't go through this exact example as you, but it's pretty close, right? And talking about childhood trauma and things like that.
Yeah.
But it seems like, it comes out just organically. That's the best way I can put it, right?
Yeah, and for the most part, I think my experience has been the same, but there's just always those occasional people that are just terrified to be honest. So they'll give me surface, like you give somebody enough surface level stuff and you can see it.
Yeah.
Right? So then I'm like, there has to be deeper things going on here. And then when I ask them and they're like, I don't know, that's when I'll be like, okay. Like I never go to a 5 ever without bringing my very first step forth. I go to every single one. I open it and say, I am an open book.
Mm-hmm.
If you have any issues, you don't understand something, feel free to see everything that I did on mine.
Yep.
Like I am an open book. It's fine. And for the most part, you're right? Like you just offer someone a safe environment and it does grow organically. But I just really like to hammer home the importance of honesty in step 5. Don't
Yep.
hold on to the things that you hate about yourself the most, right? The things that you are the most ashamed of, the things that give you the most guilt, the things that you just don't want anyone else to ever find out. Those have to come out.
Yeah, you're only as sick as your secrets, and like
Yeah.
it's an expression I've heard I don't know how many times, but it's true, right? Yeah, when you say bringing your 4s, like it was the same thing for me working the 4 and 5. Was that I bring it every time, and there's still a little bit of fear, I guess. I'm not going to write the laws that I broke on a piece of paper.
Fair.
Not going to do that, right? So
Fair.
as my sponsor explained to me when I was doing the 4 was 3 to 8 words.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
Right? 3 to 8 words. And you don't need to say much. And usually it's enough that it'll like bring it up in your mind. And it's like, okay, this is what happened, right? And so, yeah, bringing my own 4 into the 5, which I do, it's easy that most of the time as they're sharing, I have some kind of life experience that relates to it, right? And if I don't, I kind of look back and just start like flipping through the names because there's lots. And it's like, oh yeah, I was a selfish dick here, or I was a people pleaser to the extreme with this one, or whatever it was. And yeah, but typically it's just organic.
You know what I love too is like the things that I was afraid to talk about in my 5. Now I'm like I have no problem talking about anything that I've done with people doing it's just really cool to see the shift of the fear of talking about it. And now I know that the things that I thought were my liabilities are today my biggest assets because
Yep.
I help find relatability with other addicts and other alcoholics. It's just such a beautiful thing.
Yeah, with all whatever guilt or shame or whatever negative emotions, you're able to put someone at ease and be like, hey, you're not alone in this, right? You are not this like evil villain that you make yourself out to be, right?
You're sick.
Yeah,
Yeah.
sick.
Love that.
Yeah.
All right, let's talk 6.
Oh boy. Yeah. Step 6. Okay. So this is the one that I still, I guess, fight with to this day.
Okay.
Because having these things aired out in step 5 and step 10s, right? And seeing how it's like I know it's hurting me. I am well aware of like whatever defect or whatever fear is like in my life. I'm aware of it and I'm asking God, but I just went through the 12 by 12 with my sponsee, the most current one. And I guess I found satisfaction when it comes to this 6 that it's never 100%. But then Chris gets a little lazy and he's like, wow, if it doesn't have to be 100%, then it's like, it's like I do have to go through this pain and suffering whenever this comes out, right? Whatever aspect it is of my my traits that was pointed out, it's going to take some pain and suffering, basically, right? And that's the beauty of the 10s is that I'm out in the world performing as best I can, and a lot of times I'm bringing God in, and other times like I go back to the old ways. It's the way it is for me, right? Until I go through enough pain and suffering and it's not coming from God, Chris punishes himself, right? This is one of the character defects that I found is that like I still can do that, right? And I'll hit a point where it's like, okay, maybe I should call somebody and, like I don't want this anymore. And then it's like, it's moving on. For me, I have a hard time differentiating between 6 and 7 because it's very much I just sit there and beat the shit out of myself. And then it's like, once I hit enough, I'll reach out, I'll do like prayer to God. God help me. Usually that doesn't go too well. So then I got to make a phone call to a pillar that I trust. Yep. Right. And they're able to talk me through it. And yeah, a lot of times they tell me things I don't want to hear, but more often than not, like the things I don't want to hear, it's like there's this little boy inside of me that's still very scared and doesn't feel like he's worthy. Right.
I feel that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So this step 6, trying to not focus on the negative side, but if I'm this acting like this little child, at least someone that's like, I spent a lot of my life not in a good place with all that stuff, right? So I have people in my life today that are able to help show me my worth, right? because I spent a lot of time beating myself up. So when it comes to like these old behaviors that can still be current behaviors, step 6 gives me the ability that after I'm done beating myself up enough, right? I go through enough pain and able to reach out through a 10, right?
Yep.
I know we're talking about step 6, but I can't talk about 6 without 10, right? And that's just, it's, I don't know. It's tough.
You know, it's funny. On another one of the episodes about 6, 7, and 10, we talk about the first time that I understood that I knew nothing about 6 and 7. And it was like long after I had finished the steps. And I had someone, like the topic was, I think step 7 in a room. And I like immediately am like flipping to the literature that I know is not there because it's so small. And I'm like, oh my God, don't pick me first. Don't pick me first. And then they picked me first. And I'm like, I don't know anything about 7. So I had to go back and I had to talk to a lot of people. And so what I understand to be step 6 now, like, so there's 2 pieces to it, right? Doing it the first time and then trying to regain willingness when we go astray, right? And so after doing my 5, my sponsor said, okay, now you need to sit down in quiet reflection for an hour. And you need to go through and review the 5 proposals that you've already done and see how honest you were, how thorough you were, how willing you were. And you need to be able to accept that your way doesn't work. And now we're going to start making changes by trying to live in God's will for us instead.
Yeah.
And so I've heard that not a lot of people make it the hour. I'm only made it 48 minutes. And I remember I pushed myself very hard. And then I finally said, okay, like now I'm just getting angry. I'm done.
Yeah.
Right. But I lasted 48 minutes. I went through and I was like, okay, I don't want to, like I probably only spent 10 minutes going through the steps themselves. The rest was reviewing my 4-5 and flipping through all those pages being like, I don't want my life to be like this anymore. Yeah. And so I understand today that step 6 is that reflection time to really accept everything, but essentially it's another surrender, right? So we surrender in step 3 and say, okay, I can't do this anymore. We get to work in 4 and 5. Now we have a chance to see everything and then write another another blank check of willingness being like, okay, I don't want this anymore. What do I need to do?
Yeah.
And then that's the difference between 6 and 7 is that 7 is asking God to give you life experiences to help you grow away from defects.
Not the cure.
Not the cure. No magic wand. You can't just pray and say, hey, God, relieve me of this defect. Help me to be a perfect human being.
No, it's give me the situation so I can practice to do better. Do what I see as perfect while aiming for perfection, realizing I'll never hit it, but steering in that direction instead of acting out in defects like crazy.
You know what's so funny is over the last 5 days, I mean, granted, it's snowing today, so whatever, but I brought it up when I was out last night. For some reason, for the last 4 days, everybody that's driving on the road is driving 20 kilometers below the speed limit. Everybody.
Yes.
And it took me 2 full days, even now, 2 full days of getting annoyed driving before my brain went, okay, apparently God is trying to teach me to increase my level of patience.
Yeah.
Okay, I need to recognize this now and work on it. But people just think like, okay, great. So I see all these defects of character. I'm selfish. I'm dishonest. I am, all of these things. Now I'm actively just not going to be that person anymore. It's not, you can't just pray to God and just be like, okay, I'm not going to do it, right? Like my experience has been, I live in my deepest rooted defects. I don't even know I'm living in them when I am. It's not until I get to the consequences of them that I feel the pain and then become willing to ask for God's help and then correct that behavior. And that's why, for me, I grow through making a lot of mistakes because God provides me situations and I get to choose whether I'm going to deal with them the way I always have or if I'm going to grow.
Yeah. And the funny thing, so you say you don't see him. And for myself, it's probably when it comes to the most deep-rooted ones, I can relate. There's a lot of times, though, when I feel, because I can feel it right here, and then Chris tries to self-will it.
Oh.
And then there comes the pain again, right? Whatever that looks like. Can I take a bathroom break?
Yeah.
Yeah?
Totally.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you clap?
I don't know. Haven't done it yet. Okay, awesome. Let's move on to 8.
Step 8, my favorite. Yeah, okay, so going through literature, it actually came out like going through with my sponsor after the 7 and saying the prayer and looking at all that and saying, okay, we're going to work on this. And like, we're going to approach these situations, hopefully more God-centered. Step 8. I've heard some people say that they have like these different columns. Yes,
I did
no,
that.
maybe.
Yep.
So I didn't get that luxury.
Okay.
I literally just had to take everyone from my 4, everyone, and go down, write them. And then I can't remember if I got 2 weeks or something, but it was just think of the people that I don't have resentment towards, right? The people that I don't like, there's nothing from that, and add to it because I harmed them. So I have to make amends to these people.
Mm-hmm.
And it was pretty simple that I didn't get to choose on making amends, and what that looked like. It was literally just writing down the list of names. And then I got to sit down with my sponsor, and he told me yes, no, letter, and this, and what it looks like, if it's going to be a living amends, or if it's like I think there's 2 on there where it was fuck no. Like, you leave that alone, you've done enough damage or whatever, and any way I'm going to approach this situation, it's probably going to cause harm to somebody.
Yeah.
Right? I kind of wish that I had the luxury to be able to pick and choose, like yes or no, but the thing is that I could see myself maybe twisting it, right? And be like, well, I would harm somebody if I did it like this, right? And it's like, so having a sponsor who's saying, you're going to do these amends. You're going to write, and everything has to have a letter. I'm not supposed to recite the letter to the person, but each one has to, and that's part of the becoming willing, is that when I'm able to write a letter that my sponsor looks over and says, yeah, okay, cool, right? That he's not going to look at and say, no, you're justifying yourself here. You're throwing some bullshit in here, not making amends. But if I'm going to go make direct amends to somebody, that's part of forming the willingness. But yeah, it was making the list of names, and then we sat down, and I remember it was like rapid fire, shoot from the hip, and it was just yes, no, letter, and all this. I didn't get to say, right? He knew my situation. He knew all these names. He knew the story, and if he didn't know, he'd ask. And from there, it was just, this is what you got to do, so start writing your letters. And that was praying when I write these letters so that I don't try and justify my own shit or whatever. It's like owning my part. Yeah.
That's fascinating.
I didn't get this. Like, I hear a lot of people share about their...
My experience was vastly different.
Really?
Yeah. But I really like the way that was done. And obviously, that's what you needed. That's why God brought you that. Mm-hmm. My experience was very different. Interesting. So my experience was taking everything from my 4, adding, anything that I didn't have resentment, but I harmed them, adding all of the stuff to the list. So my columns that I was suggested to make were not like yes, no, maybe. It was yes, I'm willing to make those today. Maybe I'm willing to make those. I just don't think I can do it yet. And there's absolutely no way I'm making amends to you. You harmed me more than I harmed you.
Yeah.
So it was now, maybe never. And so the way that I was instructed to do it was do all of your nows first. Build enough character through taking accountability and going to God with people that you're ready to do these. And by the time you're done those, your maybe list will become your willing list, and your never list will become your maybe list. And then start working on those. And that's been my experience. The ones that I thought that I would never do are the only ones left that I've been reaching out to.
Nice.
I only have a few left. But that being said, my first experience, like my sponsor said, do 3 amends, and then we'll move on to 10. But you have to keep doing amends.
Yeah.
She said there's no reason not to learn 10 because 10 is so beneficial. So get your ass to work.
Yep.
So I did 2 of my best friends and my parents. And I got them done right away, immediately learned 10, didn't use 10 for 2 years. and then I started getting, so my experience with 9 has been, I did 3 or 4, And then I stopped. And the go-to suggestion that I've found to be in the rooms is when you finish the steps and then start to feel like shit again and life starts to get unmanageable again, the go-to is do another 4 or 5.
Oh.
Do another 4 or 5.
Okay.
You missed a bunch, do another 4 or 5. Which has been helpful for me in the past. But once I hit like 2.5 years, God drew me towards somebody who didn't ask me to do another 4 or 5. They said, how are your amends going? And I said, I don't know. And they're like, what do you mean you don't know? And I'm like, I don't know. It's in a list that's in my closet. Like, I don't even know where my list is, if I'm being perfectly honest. They're like, okay, how many amends have you made? I'm like, 4. They're like, how big was your list? I'm like, pretty big.
Yeah.
And they're like, okay, you know the step 9 promises from the book are when you're halfway done your amends, right?
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, okay. So like amends are important. And they're like, yeah. So then I went, dug up my list, did a couple more, felt better.
Yeah.
Put the list down. 6 months later, oh my God, things are getting so bad. How are your 9s? Oh shit, my 9s, right? It took me 2.5 years before I actually understood how important 9 was. And I really believed to my core that 9, in my opinion, 9 single-handedly will determine my ability to have long-term sobriety. Because 9 helps do 6 and 7. 9 helps my ability to see 10s and 11s. 9 helps my ability to help other people. Like, it's connected to everything. Being able to take accountability. Doing 9s helps me go back into that 4 where I'm on my own list and forgive myself when I actively am making change. Like, there's just so much about 9, and I just wish I understood how important it was years before I understood how important it was. Now, that being said, my situation, like just the way I did it, and I don't know if I'm right, maybe I'm wrong, I don't write it down until right before I'm going to do it.
Really?
Yeah.
So you don't bounce it off your sponsor to see?
No, 100% I do.
Okay.
100% I do. But maybe my sponsor just didn't have me do this because they knew how much I hated. I'm like the only person in recovery I know that hates journaling. I can't stand writing. I hate it. I hate it. It's not for me. So the idea of sitting down and writing for hours on end sounded awful. So maybe that's why I don't know. I'd have to ask her. But I pick an amends that I'm willing to do. Then I write it out. Then I call my sponsor. We go through it together. We make changes and edit if needed. Then I go to try to book the amends. Oh. So if I can't get the person to respond to me, I've at least written it out. And now I have to stay willing should the situation ever arise.
Yeah.
Or my newer sponsor's advice was, if you reach out to someone that doesn't get back to you, try again in a year. You can't just reach out to somebody once and be like, well, I tried.
Yep.
Is that really doing your utmost to straighten out the past?
No.
Yeah.
So yeah, we have different experience with that, I guess. And so the list, he tells me, and what you said about doing just like 3 or 4 or whatever. So he gave me the same kind of thing where it was like, he handpicked out of it and said, these are the ones you want to do first, right? And first or second was the people who have passed, right? Because I can't say it's easy, because one of the hardest letters to write was, my grandmother, who's no longer with us, right? She didn't get to see me get sober, right? So it tugs on a lot of things. So I can't say it's necessarily the easiest ones to do, but I don't know. I don't understand necessarily his process when he said all the people who have passed, they're all one group, right? But I thought it was going to be the easy one, I guess. I thought it was going to be like, but that letter, be honest here, that letter hasn't been fully written yet. Okay. Right? So I get about halfway through and then just can't.
Yeah.
And that's okay. Mm-hmm. I think.
You're making efforts, right?
Oh, yeah.
You're doing what you can, and that's willingness.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's okay.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah.
And that's step 9.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did I just lose? No, yeah. Okay. I just had a whole brain fart. Sorry, addict brain. I was like, are we on 8 or on 9? Oh, my God. Talking about making amends. Holy. Yes, yep. 9s. Super important. I only have a few left. Yep. And there, though, we'll have to see. Not ones I'm willing to talk about.
That's okay.
On the air.
Yeah, that's okay. I've got a few more than a few. My experience with making the ones I have, there was part of Chris that trying to put his guilty conscience at ease early on would try and charge out and be like, I'm sober. It talks about in the book, right? Where, they haven't even seen, the living yet. And you're trying, like, I'm trying to go in there and, like, show everyone that I'm all better. And it's like, there's got to be some time here and, like, actually showing up for these people, right? So I've had experience with doing amends that caused me to have to make more amends because I ended up dumping garbage.
Oh, the classic, I have to make an amends for the amends.
Yeah. So that's kind of tough too. But learning
and that's
from
why
it.
it's so important to consult your sponsor before you go into it. Because if you get tugged at by an emotional state at all, it turns south pretty fast.
Yeah.
Yep.
100%.
Especially when you're dealing with somebody who's hurt you back.
Yeah, see, I haven't. I don't necessarily.
No?
Well, the thing is a lot of these perceived injustices that I have, right, where I've been hurt or whatever, going to it, I'm able to look at it and not really focus on. How do I put that? The ones where I perceived I was hurt, I don't really have I'm not holding on to that hurt, I guess. Like I don't know if it's a guilty conscience thing or whatever, but it's like I'm very much just looking at what I did, right?
That's good. Not a lot. There's a lot of people that struggle with that.
But it slides. The thing is it slides to the other side of the scale because if I'm just taking ownership of everything, right? Not everything is Chris's fault. It's this weird balance.
I understand what you're saying.
Yeah.
It's hard to navigate through.
Yeah. That's why I talked to my sponsor. Like the last time when I tried charging and making amends to my brother, and I was in a Walmart, and I was like, I think I need to do this right now because my brother had texted me something, happy birthday, or it was one of the holiday texts. And I was like, I have to do it right now. And he's like, no, the fuck you don't. Right? And so sponsorship is important.
Sure is. Okay. 10. I love 10. 10's one of my favorite steps.
It is.
It took me a long time to learn it. And it's funny. I remember going through the program, going through the steps the first time. And I remember when I was 6 months to a year sober, listening to people that had 2 to 4 to 5 years sober, listening to all these people in the rooms share about how long it took them to get good at step 10 and how they wished that they had done it more thoroughly. Like, I remember listening to these people and being like, that looks awful. They are crying while sharing. I'm going to make sure that I never do that. Like, I'm going to take care of it. But there's a reason there's a warning in the book as soon as you read 10. There's a reason it says, this is contingent on your spiritual condition and not to rest on your laurels, because it's very easy for us to do a bunch of work, not feel desperate anymore, feel some relief and go, oh my God, it's not that bad. Okay, I'm good. I'm finally good now.
Mm-hmm.
That was at least my experience, is like I spent 4 through 9 doing all this work and trying to feel all this relief. And I'm like, okay, great. Now I'm watching all these people say 10's important. I'm going to be aware of it. Then I actively lived in defects for 2 years, went through a lot of pain.
Yeah.
And then figured out that it doesn't matter how good I am, how recovered I am, or how hard I work. I can't do 10 alone.
Yeah. And also, step 10 is not you pray to God when you feel disturbed. No, it's not calling someone saying, can you believe this fucker? Because that's
that
like,
dick.
Well, that's literally it, is like a step 10 that I would do is like, I think I'd be doing a step 10 and I get all self-righteous and then call somebody and be like, can you believe this? And it just victim, right? Or whatever it is, and not looking at my part at all. Where am I selfish, dishonest, resentful, or afraid?
Yes.
Yeah.
Nailed
You're getting there. But looking at my part there, because I don't know, say I'm still sick. I think that's like, there's still, the disease is still there, right? If I want to let it take hold, I can, if I'm not bringing God into it. And that's why it recommends in the book to like invite God, pray to him first. And yeah, maybe I need to make that phone call to someone who's spiritually fit so that when I say, can you believe this fucker? They're able to say, can you believe yourself? Right?
Yep.
Can you believe yourself? Like, let's not talk about that. Like, I'm sure that they're sick in their own way or whatever, but that's beyond your control, right? So let's look at you, right? Because that was the first, Oh, the first year and a half was really bad. It was just constant bitch session,
Mm-hmm.
right? And that's okay, right? Because there was some growth that came out of it. Because I had some crotchety old timers that chew me a new asshole, and
Yep.
yeah.
That's funny. Yeah, for me, like, and it's so cool to listen to other people and their experiences because, like, that wasn't my experience at all. My defects stopped me from doing tens because my defects are that I need to be accepted, I need to be liked, I need to prove to the world that I can do this, right? So when things came up, my defects worked against me reaching out to someone. I could pray until the cows came home, but because I was blocked, God can't really get through when you're pushing him out with all this stuff, right? So then I had to get to a point of going through so much pain where I didn't know what else to do. And then I called someone, and I can't, it's so funny to me today that I can't remember I don't remember who I talked to. Don't even remember what the 10 was about. But I remember being in so much pain and being so stressed out that when I got off the phone, when I finally gave in and became willing to try it another way, I got off the phone, I looked up at the sky, and I was like, oh my God, that was so much easier.
Yeah.
And it's just hilarious to me that now I can't even remember what that was about because tens are today such a common thing in my life. As soon as I see something that I don't understand, I'm not happy with, or I'm afraid of, I'm on the phone. I'm calling, like, I'm praying. I pray for everything. I bring God into everything. But I pray and then I reach out to somebody who's 12-stepped right away. And I look forward to doing them because I like to grow. I like to see where I'm wrong. I like to, all the things that I thought that I never wanted to see in 4 and 5 because I just didn't understand why that stuff happened to me. I crave those now because I'm like, this is going to help me grow. This is going to help me make sure that I can move away from ever feeling like this again.
Yep.
I just love 10. I just love 10. And I love, like, the step 10 promises. Like, that's what I read. When I speak at treatment centers, I always end with the step 10 promises. And the step 10 promises for me are my measurement of how solid my program is.
Yep.
And that was taught to me by somebody else who would come on the show. Like, have you ceased fighting everything and everyone?
I'm not, you know, and if I ever come across a day where I say that I have completely ceased, like, entirely, to, like, have this idea that I'm perfect, right? That's where I for myself anyways, is where I can kind of get into trouble. Because if I get this delusion that, like, there's no antagonistic part of Chris still there, right? It's forming this idea that, you know, like, I am perfect, right? Step 10 will always be a part of my life because there will always be something.
Right.
Right?
Well, and that's just it, right? Like, it's you have to continually do step 10 to keep the step 10 promises, right? But in constantly trying to look at my part helps me accept other people and helps me not fight other people, right? And, like, that's
100%.
and actively doing it helps me keep the promises in 10, right? Do I even think about drugs or alcohol as a solution anymore? No. If you start, you're probably not doing enough 10s.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, and then I could also look at, you know, job, money, whatever else. And it's like, well, it's not a drug or alcohol, but if I'm starting to lean towards that, there's probably something going on.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I just love 10 for that.
Yep.
Okay, 11.
A lot of times in my step 10s, I get told, you should probably meditate, Chris.
Yeah.
I'm definitely getting better at 11 when it comes to, like, upon awakening, retire at night. Getting better, I slack. Let's be real here, right? And that's
Me too.
this is the thing is, like, and that, so there's a level of pain that comes with that, right? Because if I'm allowing my brain to go crazy like that, right? And if I'm not just quieting the mind and just, it's a simple reading. It's like, what, 2 pages, right? So going through life today and at least, say, 5 times out of the week doing it is better than what it was before.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
So it does help, and it's like it automatically recenters my mind into at least pausing, right? And these little reminders, right? Like, for me, my step 11, I'm not going to sit here and say, yeah, I'm doing great with it, because it's like I am just now going through Upon Awakening and Retire at Night, and actually like doing that with some kind of regular consistency, right? And that's my experience. But learning to listen to guided meditations, and reading that excerpt out of the big book, it's enabled me to actually have at least a couple minutes, right?
Yeah, for most of us, meditation's fucking hard.
Oh,
yeah.
yeah.
I understand.
Yeah.
It took me 3 years to get good at 10. I'm pretty confident it's going to take me 3 extra years to get great at 11.
Yeah.
See, I'm great at On Awakening. Every single day, unless I'm sick and I don't get out of bed that day. Like On Awakening is not an issue.
Yep.
My higher power is essentially just the universe. And so I've incorporated my morning prayer and meditation. Sometimes I do card readings in the morning. Sometimes I just do my morning prayers. I align my chakras. Like there's just a lot of energy stuff that I do.
Yep.
And I love it. It's great. Meditation, being able to actively say, I'm going to sit down and meditate for 5 minutes, I suck at. I suck at. I'm not great at it. What I've found super effective for me, not so easy in the winter, the more that I get incorporated with the universe, with energy, the more I go to the mountains and go hiking, the more I understand how much of the creator is surrounding you in nature, the more that I can meditate. Because I will go take my shoes off and sit on my front lawn with my bare feet in my hands. And I will just touch the earth.
Grounding.
For a few minutes.
Yep.
And it's beautiful that finally science has proved something that native cultures have known for hundreds of years, is that something physically happens to the body when you ground and when you touch the earth. And now they can actually, like, I've seen really cool videos of like your pH balances leveling out and like things actually happening inside your body. And I just think it's cool to see, but it's funny because I watch, my friends with native culture that have known that stuff for years.
Yeah.
But that, it's so much easier for me to sit and just be in the sun and touch the earth for 5 minutes than it is to sit on a couch and close my eyes and try to clear my mind for 5 minutes.
Yeah, the circus and the monkey with the cymbals going. Yeah.
Oh my God. Yeah. And then it's Retire at Night that I suck at.
That one actually, yeah.
I suck at it. As long as I'm sponsoring and as long as I get someone to 11, I'll do it for a couple of weeks in a row and then I'll forget.
That's the beauty about sponsoring people, is that you're going through the steps again yourself.
All the time.
Right? Yeah.
Right. But for me, I find I need to be more diligent and I do need more discipline. But because I'm so good at 10s now, my lack of 11 doesn't build up because there's not a lot of review that I have to do because I am today actively aware. I still need work on it, but On Awakening, I'm great at. Meditating, I'm getting better at. Retire at Night, I suck at. I suck at it.
I relate to that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. The last thing that I want to do when I get home after a really long day at work is sit down and reflect on where I need to improve.
And journaling
Honestly.
and writing all this stuff down. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so the biggest part that I found, because I too suck at We Retire at Night. I'm not going to sit here and spout up. But the point for Chris that I've been reminded of a few times is that it's constructively, right? Because I don't know what it is about doing inventories, but I will gravitate towards kind of self-deprecation.
Oh, morbid
right?
Reflection?
Exactly.
Yep.
Right?
Okay.
Rumination. And so focusing on that word at the very least, it's I'm not this shitheel anymore, right? I'm not, I act out in defects, right? But it does no good to anyone to tear myself down. Constructively review the day and look at, not just the bad, but the good as well.
Totally.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah, I was bad at that at the beginning too. Yeah, step 11. There's a lot involved in step 11.
A lot of work and a lot of discipline Chris needs to improve on.
Yeah, I feel that.
Yeah.
All right, let's talk about 12.
Oh, boy.
Service. Giving it back.
Yeah. So, service, I became a service fiend. Taking on service positions and turning those into my new drug went early on in sobriety, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, there's worse things to put my time into, right? Because it's being productive and it's doing something for the good. But learning that when I came to a point where I was saying yes to everything.
Everything.
As soon as someone would ask, and like even if someone wasn't asking, I'd be
I can
like,
help.
"Hey, yeah, do you guys need you need a chair? Oh yeah," and like seeking that out, and like getting to this point where it's like my life revolved around just recovery, and it's like that's not all of life. It has to be an integral part of my life, but it can't be the only thing, right?
Yes.
So learning to find balance, right? I struggle finding balance, right? But
Most of us
service, yeah, going to the extreme with service and giving a little bit too much, as it were, I don't think is the worst thing. It took me a while to like actually sponsor and actually get people through. A lot of times, I don't know about your experience, but like when it comes to starting to read through the book, a lot of times we don't commit and people will just kind of, right? And that's nature of the beast, but it can be frustrating because there's a sense of pride in Chris and be like, well, why can't I seem to
What
get
am I
someone?
doing wrong?
What am I doing wrong, right? That has evolved now to where I'm actually getting people through, not just doctor's opinion, and it's actually like getting up in this. I mean, it's so exciting because it's like, wow, you get to see, like you were saying about the 5, you see the light start coming back up in their eyes.
Isn't it beautiful?
It's huge, right? And for a while though, like I kind of beat myself up over that. And so step 12 is not just about sponsorship.
No.
They don't actually even use the word sponsor in there, but I think it is a pretty damn good idea, right? Yeah, the service can mean a lot of things, and it's finding the balance, I guess, for me. Working step 12 and not jumping on every service position, not treating sponsees like a commodity because they're not, right? And people say like, oh, I got 20 sponsees, and it's like, do you have anything else in your life, right?
Yep.
So for me, I try to keep 3 because for me that is still a lot of work to have like 3 people that you're working with in varying levels of whatever the recovery is and treating them like human beings, right? They're not a commodity,
Oh, yeah.
right?
I started with 1. I worked up to 3. But now that I have more things coming back in my life and I'm trying to find balance, I'm back to 1.
Yep.
Like I have like 15 sponsees, but I have 1 that I actively meet with every week to read the book.
Yeah.
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 Yeah. I think one of the coolest things that I've had an opportunity to experience when it comes to 12, and it's some of the greatest advice that I've ever heard. I went through the same thing, right? My first sponsee got to 7 and then changed sponsors. And then my next sponsee got through all 12. That was crazy, right? And then my next 25, anywhere between 4 or less, were gone, right? And I went through that same thing, and I'm just like, is it me? Like, do I need to go through the steps again? Am I doing this wrong? What's happening? And the situation that got me to this point, it's too long to share for that. But the important thing is I reached out to someone, and I talked with them for a really long time about this situation, and it all kind of bubbled up. I didn't even know I was upset about it at the time. And what they explained to me was one of the most beautiful things I've ever heard. And he said, Jen, don't you understand that God brings you exactly what you need, exactly when you need it? God is purposely bringing you people that aren't supposed to make it through right now so you can learn. God is bringing you people that aren't going to make it so that when you read something in the book that you have no idea what it means, you can look at them and say, hold on, I need to call my sponsor and figure out what the hell this means.
Yeah.
Right? He's bringing you people to get better at sponsoring. So when a rock star comes, you're ready for them.
Yeah.
And I was like, I just got tingles just saying that, right? What a cool way to turn that victim, poor me, what am I doing wrong, into, oh my God, I'm supposed to mess up. They're supposed to mess up. We're supposed to learn these things together.
Yeah.
And then I stopped worrying about whether or not I got people through. And then suddenly people started going through. And I'm like, oh my God, I did enough people that couldn't get through that now the people that are ready for this, I have the capacity to teach them.
Exactly.
And it was just such a beautiful thing. I loved it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
I was the same way though. Service. My cup was so empty. And it took me a long time to realize that that is selfish too.
Yep.
And I was doing a disservice to my fellowships by holding on to something that I wasn't actively working and trying to do. Now I'm very like, I have one position and I take on one sponsee. I'm very like back to basics, right? And that's taken me a really long time. But I think the biggest key part that I've noticed about 12 and that I really, really have noticed doing this podcast and bringing people on this show has really showed me whether or not you practice these principles in all of your affairs. Yep. And it's really cool. And so I'm really glad to have you here and have this awesome experience with you, because you can really, if you listen to someone, you can really tell if someone's talking the talk in a room or if they're really trying to get better in this life.
Yeah.
You can really, really see it. And I'm somebody that I'm not perfect. And some days I don't make any progress at all, but I'm always actively trying to be better.
100%.
And it's just such a cool experience to finally have enough humility to know that I'm never going to be perfect, but to see where I was and where I am now, I can't imagine what it's going to be like 5 years from now.
Yeah.
Right? I'm going to look back on today, 5 years from now, and be like, oh, that poor little 4-year-old, she didn't know anything.
Yeah.
Right? Which
Yep.
is amazing, because I thought, like, looking back at my 1 year, I'm like, I didn't know anything. Now I know a little. But it's just cool to be like, when you're constantly trying to improve, looking back and being like, holy shit, look how far I've come.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And seeing the leaps and bounds that you make, even though at the time you don't see it, because it's little baby steps, right?
I remember seeing you. I remember seeing you in rooms. Like, I'm not that far ahead of you in time, but I remember some of your shares. And I remember you were just like the rest of us, right? It was hard in the beginning. You've come a very, very long way.
Thank you.
I'm very proud of you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Don't cry. Or actually,
Too
sorry,
late.
you can cry. Yeah.
You know what's funny is I don't think I've gone a single episode without shedding at least one tear. But
That's a good thing, though.
It
It's
is a
like the
good thing.
healthy showing emotions thing.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Anyways, get a sponsor.
Yeah.
Get a
Get
book.
big book.
And do the goddamn steps.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right?
It's not a horse race, but it needs to be done.
And if we can do it, literally anyone can.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
like the biggest message that I try to send people. Like, I'm not special. I'm not special. I didn't even want to be here. Like, I was forced by the law to be here.
Yeah, I remember coming to the rooms and still having this idea that maybe they'll just show me how to drink like just 1 or 2 a day.
How to control it.
Yeah, I want to control it, right? It like there was some kind of lurking notion where it's like, you're probably gonna have to stop drinking and using. But I was like, maybe, right?
Mm-hmm.
But
But
I know
no,
better now.
right? And
I know
that's-
that much at least.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's a solid one.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Knowing that life is fucking unmanageable and that we can't fucking do it alone.
Yep.
I'm very happy with this episode. Thank you very much for coming on the show.
Thanks, Jen.
I
I'm happy to be
appreciate
here.
that. I really hope you come back.
To this?
Yeah.
Hell yeah.
Hell yeah.
We'll see what the progress looks like in a couple of years. Maybe.
Or maybe in like a couple months.
Oh. Oh, yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
See, the cool thing about this show is that I can talk about the same topics with multiple people, and it's a totally different episode. I have one gentleman has already been on my show twice. You haven't seen it yet because it hasn't come out yet.
Okay.
It hasn't been edited yet.
Yeah.
Edited.
Edited.
I should edit this out. Anyways, we'll see you next time.
You bet.
Thanks, Chris. Peace.
Bye.